Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. Part 1.
Sunday, 11:17 a.m. She knows the cause of death without needing to be told. The hand-delivered note from the solicitor is brief and unemotional, enclosing details of the funeral arrangements on Friday, along with a copy of an obituary from the Daily Telegraph. The obituary describes Sir William Mitchell's life. He read modern and medieval languages at Cambridge, was drafted into the Special Operations Executive during the war, and later rose to a high position in the Foreign Office, advising the British and Commonwealth governments on intelligence matters. Apparently, he was never happier than when walking in the Scottish hills with his wife, now deceased. She had not known that. What she had already known was this, that he would appear to die peacefully in his sleep. Her breath is coming in short, sharp bursts. She thinks of the silver necklace William gave her 60 years ago, the engraved St. Christopher's charm. She had not known at the time what the charm concealed, the needle tip infused with the substance which relaxes the muscles so effectively that the lungs stop moving almost instantaneously, death by asphyxiation, so motionless that it passes for peaceful. Is this what has happened? Did they finally come for him after all these years? If they did, it can only mean that there is new evidence to have made him believe that it was not worth trying to defend himself and his reputation. Better to die than to risk the possibility of his knighthood being stripped from him, of having to endure the public recriminations and shame such revelations would bring, along with the inevitable criminal trial. And why should he endure such humiliation? His wife is dead, he has no children, nothing to stop him. No son to protect, as she has. The obituary is accompanied by a picture of William as a young man, his features clear and unblemished, just as he was the last time she saw him. To Joan, it is like looking at a ghost. They come for her later that morning. A long black car turns into the quiet suburban street, where she's lived ever since moving back to England from Australia after her husband's death 15 years earlier. She observes the man and woman as they step out and glance about them. The knock is loud and staccato, official-sounding. "Open up! Security services!" She wonders what they would do if she does not answer the door. The thought occurs to her that they might try to find her at her son's house if they do not find her here. Her neck feels hot at the prospect of one of Nick's boys answering the door, muddy-haired and careless in his football kit, calling out that some people have come about Granny. Yes, she can see why William might have thought it better to kill himself. How easy it would be. But easier for whom? Nick would be left to face the accusations alone. And quite suddenly Joan knows with absolute certainty that in such circumstances he would not rest until he had cleared his mother's name from whatever charge they brought against her. It would all seem too far-fetched, too out of character, to square with the mother he has known all his life. She tugs the door open, her heart pounding in her chest. They drive her to a large building in a narrow street not far from the Houses of Parliament. They do not speak, except to check she is comfortable, and to ask again if she would like to call a legal representative. "This is a matter of state security. I would really advise—" The woman hesitates. "Your son is a barrister, I believe, Mrs. Stanley. Would you like us to contact him?" "No," Joan says, and her voice is sharp. "I haven't done anything wrong." They sit in silence, Joan's hands clasped tightly together as if in prayer. But she is not praying. She is thinking. She is making sure she remembers everything, so that she cannot be taken by surprise.
In the autumn of 1937, Joan leaves home to attend Newnham College, Cambridge. She is 18 years old and impatient to leave. Her science teacher, Miss Abbott, was the first to suggest she might try for university, and it was on her instigation that Joan applied to read natural sciences for the honours certificate at Cambridge. During those first few days of living alone in Cambridge, Joan finds that she is amazingly, gloriously happy just to be alive. She attends lectures in the mornings, leaving her bicycle propped against the railings of the science faculty, and then sliding into the back row of the lecture theatre with her satchel under her arm. On her third night, Joan is awoken by a smart rap on the window. She leans out of bed, pulls back the bottom corner of the curtain. 2 scarlet, high-heeled shoes are standing on her windowsill. A girl is half standing, half crouching in the shoes, resplendent in a black silk dress and a white scarf, and when she sees the curtain lift, she smiles and puts a finger to her lips. "Hurry up and let me in," she mouths through the glass. Joan hesitates, and then slides out of bed to undo the catch. "My room's on the 3rd floor," the girl announces, by way of explanation, removing her shoes one at a time before jumping down from the windowsill. "Darn curfew," she mutters. "Sorry for getting you up." The laundry window is closed. Joan rubs her eyes. "Don't mention it." The girl glances around the room. Her hair and eyes are dark, and her lips bear a bright slash of red lipstick. "Are you a first year too?" Joan is surprised by the implication in the question that this girl is also a new arrival. She seems so self-assured, so certain of the rules. "I say, I don't suppose you've got a dressing gown I could borrow. I don't want to get caught walking around like this. Better to pretend we've been up all night drinking cocoa or something like the rest of them." Joan turns away, not wanting to let on that this was, in fact, how she had spent the latter part of the evening, that she was one of them. She goes to the wardrobe and takes out her dressing gown. "Is that a mink coat?" the girl asks from behind Joan's shoulder. "Yes, I think so." Joan gives a small shrug, self-conscious at having such a thing in her wardrobe, procured from a second cousin who no longer had any use for it, but Joan cannot imagine that she will ever be bold enough to wear it. "It's a bit hideous, isn't it?" "Well, it's rather fin de siècle," says the girl. She strokes the coat and flings it around her shoulders, and then she lifts her arms and twirls so that the mink coat spins out, miraculously transformed, made glamorous in a way that Joan has never imagined. There is something rich about it as it spins and flares, which she can't help but admire as the girl discards it on Joan's bed. "I'll bring your dressing gown back tomorrow," the girl says, tiptoeing to the door. She peers out to check that the corridor is empty, and then looks back to nod towards the pair of scarlet stilettos lying discarded in the middle of Joan's room. "And I'll pick up my shoes then too, if that's all right. They don't make very convincing slippers." Joan waits for the girl to close the door, and then she glances at the girl's shoes, so bold against her beige rug. As promised, the girl comes to Joan's room the following morning to return the dressing gown. Joan is writing an essay on diffraction techniques in the study of atomic particles and does not hear her approaching. When she looks up, she sees the girl leaning against the doorframe, dressed in a blue trouser suit. "Thanks for last night. Sorry if I startled you." Joan grins. "Well, you did rather. Where had you been, anyway? Anywhere good?" "I was with my cousin and some of his friends." "Is he a student here too?" "He's at Jesus College, doing a PhD. To Joan's surprise, she realises that she is glad it was her window this girl chose to climb through last night. Joan catches sight of the invitation propped up on her bookshelf. "Are you going to the sherry party this evening?" she asks. "The tutor's sherry party?" The girl gives a small burst of laughter, and Joan feels faintly embarrassed for having mentioned it. "Only if I can wear your fur coat." Her name is Sonia, an exotic, unusual name, which is fitting for a girl who does not walk through life, but sails. They walk home from the sherry party arm in arm, both of them giddy from too much alcohol. Sonia does an impression of one of the girls. "Which boarding school did you say you attended in Surrey?" Joan laughs, even though she is curious to know the answer to this too. Almost as if Sonia can read her thoughts, she says suddenly, I was only there for 2 years. At boarding school? She nods. It was in Surrey. A pause. But I was born in Russia. Are your parents here in England too? Joan asks. Sonia does not look at her. My father was killed a few years after the revolution. It's okay, she adds quickly. I never even met him. She stops. And my mother died of pneumonia when I was 8. Joan feels suddenly very young. She squeezes Sonia's arm. I'm so sorry. It's all right. I went to live with my uncle and cousin in Leipzig after that. The cousin you saw last night? Yes, Leo. He sent for me to come here. We're Jewish, you see. It must have been terrible for you, Joan says. I don't know. Besides, I had Leo. She looks at Joan, and her expression is scrutinising but also curious. I'm going to see some films at the town hall with my cousin. Why don't you come along? I think you'll like them.
Sunday, 4:08 p.m. Joan is tired. It has been a long afternoon, and the light outside has faded. Reluctantly, she takes the police report handed to her by the woman, Ms. Hart, and peers at it through her reading glasses. There is an advertisement stapled to it. See the mighty Red Army in action, a Kino Films production. Ms. Hart is watching her closely. Were you there? How would I know? Joan retorts, her voice raised in exasperation. This was nearly 70 years ago. But you're not denying there was a possibility that this was the sort of event you might have been attracted to. Everyone went to that sort of thing in those days. She stops. She does remember this particular film. How could she have forgotten it? But it is alarming to see that they might know this too. How could they? Miss Hart looks at Joan. Was that the first time you met him? Who? Leo Galich. Oh. The sound of his name is like an explosion in her chest. It has been so long since she heard anyone say it out loud.
When they arrive, Joan is surprised by how many people are already thronging into the hall. Joan casts her eyes around, trying to guess which one Sonia's cousin might be. It is several minutes before she spots someone whom she is almost certain must be Leo. He has a shock of dark hair, and the same translucent, almost golden skin as Sonia, the same dark brown eyes behind the wire-framed spectacles. He seems to spot Sonia, and he strides towards her. They kiss on both cheeks in the European manner. He slips into the pew in front of them and turns to Joan, holding out his hand for her to take. You must be Joan, he says, giving a small bow. I've heard all about you. Joan feels her cheeks flush and is relieved when Sonia interrupts by batting Leo on the arm. Why do you always insist on bowing like that? Sometimes I wonder if you're not the most middle-class person I've ever known. How many times must I tell you, Leo says, talking to Sonia but still looking at Joan. I'm a socialist, not an anarchist. We must keep some decorum. The film begins with a Red Army airdrop over Germany in which hundreds of men parachute from aeroplanes like flying ants and then use sticks to invade a series of German tanks, battering down their opponents with a violence that causes Joan to look away. Near the end of the film, one character turns to another and says, It's not really fair, is it, this battle? What do you mean? The other says. That we have sticks and they have tanks? The first man shakes his head. We may not have tanks, but at least we know what we're fighting for. The two men embrace, and there is a burst of percussion to accompany the rush of credits, which confirms Joan's suspicions that the acting company was understaffed, and the audience breaks into applause. Joan joins in, not wishing to appear impolite. There is a buzz of conversation around them. What was intended by this scene or that? Was the flower on the factory floor a metaphor for hope or for crushed individualism? Joan listens and feels chided by these overheard conversations. She did not even notice the flower. The following morning, she is already late for her first lecture. As she walks, she hears someone call her name. It is Leo. "I wanted to find you," he says. "I only turned away for a minute yesterday, and when I looked back, you'd both vanished. Like two pumpkins in a fairy tale." Joan laughs. "Or princesses," she corrects him, surprised that Leo would make a reference like that. He seems too serious to be interested in fairy tales. But it turns out that Leo Galich has a thing about fairy tales. He tells her that they remind him of home, of the clear mirrored lake beside his family's old summer house in Russia before they moved to Germany. It is impossible to be Russian, he tells her, and not have a thing about fairy tales. "Communism," he continues. "Now there's a fairy tale. The whole of the Russian Revolution was built on a fairy tale. I thought it was because of the war, and not enough bread." Leo hesitates at this interruption. "That as well." "So those heavy books you're carrying are just a decoy, are they?" Joan asks. "They look serious, but they're really full of pumpkins and princesses." Leo frowns, and then sees that she is joking and gives a short laugh of surprise. "Sonia said you were different from the others." Joan is flattered to hear this indirect compliment. He nods and gestures towards the books he is carrying. "They're documents of numbers, actually. Not very interesting reading, unless you know what you're looking for." "And what are you looking for?" He glances at her. "Proof." "Proof?" "That the Soviet system works." The sudden awkwardness that has arisen is alleviated by the sound of an aeroplane droning above them. Leo looks at Joan. "Do you know the Russian word for aeroplane?" "No." "Samolet. It means magic carpet. Don't you think that's a wonderful description?" As he speaks, Joan gazes up at him, noticing that the bright skin around his eyes appears almost luminous, and for a brief moment she finds herself wondering if his whole body glows like that.
Monday, 8:42 a.m. There is a knock at the front door of the house. Joan is still wearing her clothes from the day before, after being escorted home the previous evening by Miss Hart and Mr. Adams. Her bus pass and passport were confiscated, and the electronic tag was fitted to her ankle. She has been placed under curfew in the evenings and is expected to cooperate with daily questioning by MI5 until her name is released to the House of Commons on Friday. And then what? She does not want to think about this, not now, not yet. "Mum?" a voice calls. "Mum, are you there?" Joan feels her breath catch in her throat. Nick. Oh God. What is he doing here? He cannot find out what is going on. Nick is standing in the hallway. He is 49 years old, tall and slim with a crop of silver hair. Nicholas Stanley, QC. She feels a shiver of pride at what her son has achieved. "There you are. I've just had the strangest phone call. It was Keith, one of the solicitors at the Crown Prosecution Service. He heard a rumour." He stops and runs his hand through his hair. Joan turns away from him and starts to walk towards the kitchen. "He said they found 2 old Soviet spies. They started questioning the first one last week, but he died rather suddenly. Probably suicide," Keith said. Joan does not want to think about William. She blocks Nick's voice out of her head and turns on the grill. "Mum, are you listening? The Home Office is preparing a case against the second spy now." Fill the kettle. Tea bags in the teapot. "I know it's ridiculous," Nick continues, "but he said your name had come up, linked to your war work when you were a secretary." Slice the bread. Don't turn around. "Mum, are you listening?" She feels Nick's hand on her shoulder. The water in the kettle is bubbling furiously, and her hands shake as he takes hold of them. "Mum," he says, "they think it's you." "I know," she whispers. "What do you mean?" "They were here yesterday. They'll be here again today." "Who?" "MI5. Nick's mouth drops open.
Until she has seen it for herself, Joan has no idea quite how much work is involved in belonging to any sort of left-leaning political group. The first time she attends, she arrives with Leo. It has been several weeks since their first kiss, and Sonia has been informed, although not in any detail. Joan goes with him because she is intrigued to know what it is that draws him away from her so frequently. He leads her up a wooden staircase in one of the old courtyards of Jesus College and pushes open a red-painted wooden door to reveal a fug of cigarette smoke and a collection of perhaps 10 people sitting on the floor and talking. Sonia is standing by the window. She is wearing a clinging blue dress and smoking a cigarette, which she lowers from her lips as they enter, her eyes narrowing as she glances from Joan to Leo and back to Joan again. Then she smiles and holds out her arms in greeting. For a moment, Joan wishes she hadn't come. This is not her place. It is Leo's, and Sonia's. If Leo hadn't informed her otherwise, she would probably think that Sonia is jealous in some way. But Leo has told her that this is a ridiculous suggestion. Sonia is not the jealous type. She is just protective, whatever that means. She looks at Sonia, who is leaning out of the window to extinguish her cigarette against the brickwork. She flicks it from her fingers, watching its careless descent into the flower bed below. Joan has decided that she will not sleep with Leo until he has told her he loves her. Leo, however, is unaware of this decision, and so he asks her to stay every time they spend the evening together, and every time she refuses. It has created an impasse in their relationship, but it is not uncomfortable. If anything, it raises the tension a little. Over the next few weeks, Joan attends several other meetings. Tonight, the subject is Spain, and a fair-haired man called William is trying to persuade the others that they really ought to go out there and join up with the Republican forces as part of the International Brigade. How childish he sounds, Joan thinks. How dishonest. Here he is, with no threat of imminent violence, not a gun to be seen, biscuits being passed around, and talking as if he is some sort of battle-worn hero. She is relieved when eventually Leo speaks. It's a war. Everyone dies in vain when it comes down to it. I didn't realise you were such a pacifist, Sonia says to Leo, crossing her long, dark, stockinged legs. Leo shrugs. I'm just saying I wouldn't choose to go to war. Who would? But I don't think we have a choice. We have to go, William announces. Fascism will spread across Europe if we don't stop it now. Leo says nothing, but takes a cigarette from his pocket. Go on then, Leo, Sonia says. You're dying to tell them all. Joan frowns, suddenly aware that Leo is deliberately avoiding her gaze. Oh, Sonia says, looking at Joan and putting her hand to her mouth as if she has said something she shouldn't. Hasn't he told you? Told me what? Leo clears his throat. I'm going to Moscow. Joan stares at him. The others cluster for more details, but Joan feels her body start to burn. For how long? 3 months. I've been invited to give a lecture, and then I'll be taken on a tour. Joan stands up and steps out into the corridor, not stopping until she is far enough away to feel alone. Footsteps are coming towards her. Leo. I was going to tell you, he says. He pulls her face up to his, kissing her lips. Stay with me tonight, Jojo. Please. Before I go. She looks at him, holding her breath, waiting for him to say the words. Oh, she knows he will not say them. She knows it's just a question of whether or not she will capitulate. William opens the door. Come along, we're starting again. Joan hesitates. She sees Sonia step out behind William, and at the sight of her, Joan feels her cheek flush, because it turns out that she, unlike Sonia, is the jealous type. Or at least, this is what she decides the burning feeling must be. And she is angry with Leo for not telling her first, for not understanding how much he means to her. Her blood runs hot inside her. "No," she says suddenly. "We're leaving early tonight." At Leo's college gate, they have to sneak past the night porter. Outside his door, he fumbles for his key, and when he hurries her inside, he kisses her. His hand slips underneath her skirt, and his fingers find the top of her stockings. Her hands clutch his neck as her body arches towards him. "I shouldn't be here," she whispers, suddenly scared of what they are about to do. She tries to move away from him, but the muscles in her feet will not obey instructions. She wants to kiss his neck and his chest and wrap her legs around his waist. She wants him to be hers. And she knows once it is all over, she will want to cover herself up. He will look at her and kiss her, and then he will offer her his jacket as he smuggles her out of his room in the morning, and she will wish she could have stayed there forever. But she also knows before any of this has happened, when she is still standing in front of him with her blouse open at the neck, that no, even after all of this, he still will not say it. Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. Part 2.
Monday, 11:52 a.m. The photograph of Leo is produced from Ms. Hart's slender briefcase and pushed across the table to Joan. She has not seen it before. He is dressed in shorts and a white open-necked shirt. There is a cigarette balancing on his lower lip, smouldering carelessly. Nick glances at the photograph over her shoulder. "So that's him, is it? Comrade Leo, off to Russia to prepare himself for the revolution." Miss Hart looks intently at Joan. "But he did think the revolution would come. He wanted it to happen." "Yes, but—" Joan stops. "Lots of people thought it was inevitable back then." "And you?" Joan shakes her head. "I was never a member of the party." "Does it matter?" Nick asks, his voice impatient. "There's no crime in having had a few lefty friends at university." "Your mother's political beliefs are not irrelevant to this case," Miss Hart says. Joan looks back at the photograph of Leo. She recognizes the expression on his face. His eyes concentrated, giving the impression that he's listening intently, which he probably is, while also being conscious of the camera, allowing just a hint of that unreadable, blameless smile.
He is back. He is back. He is back. It is nearly 3 months since she last saw him, and in that time there have been letters, but not what you might call love letters, exactly. "The air here is fresher than any I ever breathed," he writes. "The central question of poverty in the midst of plenty has been solved, although there are still some technical glitches." There is no mention of the night they spent together in any of his correspondence, although she thinks of it often. But now he is back, and she can relax, because the first thing he does after dropping off his bag is to climb through the window of the linen cupboard at Newnham College and stride along the corridor to her room as if he has absolute permission to be there, which he doesn't. If they were to be discovered like this, lying together in Joan's narrow bed, the consequences would be disastrous. He rolls towards her and pulls her back down under the covers. "Do you know what I'd like to do now?" he asks. She leans forward to kiss his neck. "I might have an idea." "Roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, potatoes, the lot." "Oh," she says, disappointed. "And there was I thinking the gnawing sensation in your stomach was desire for me." He laughs. "It is. But I'm hungry, too. The food in Russia was as bad as I remembered it, And so there it is. He is back, and nothing has changed. They go to a pub on the outskirts of Cambridge and play ping-pong until the food arrives. When it does, she picks out a selection of food from her plate to add to his. "Have some of mine. You look hungry." He grins. "I am. Thanks, Jojo. My sweet little comrade." She smiles. "What were you eating out there, anyway?" "More than most of the population, that's for sure." Joan frowns. "I thought you said—" He waves his fork. "I did. The problem is solved, theoretically." He leans forward conspiratorially. "But I mentioned technical glitches, didn't I?" Joan nods. "Well," he says, and then pauses, seemingly trying to decide whether to confide in Joan or not. "You must promise never to mention this to anyone." Joan looks at him. She does not understand what could be so important, but she sees that he wants her to say the words. "I promise," she says. He nods. "They took me out to the countryside to see what collectivization meant in practice for the peasants. Most of the farms were pretty well run, but the food production figures they were submitting just didn't seem to me to add up." He pauses and takes a sip of beer. "I mentioned this to one of the economists, Grigory Fyodorovich. To be honest, I pestered him about it until eventually he cracked. He told me something that he made me promise I would never link back to him. That's why you must never tell anyone." "I understand." "Grigory Fyodorovich told me that the 1928 figures come from the weight of the grain after it is harvested and bagged." Joan frowns, confused. "Well, how else would they weigh it?" "The way they do now. They estimate the amount of grain in the field before it has been harvested, and they use those figures." "So they're lying?" "No," Leo whispers sharply. "Not lying. Misleading, perhaps." "But you'll publish this information, won't you?" Leo twists his fork in his hand. "I haven't decided yet. I will if it comes to war and these figures aren't corrected." "What difference would that make?" "The Soviet Union relied heavily on aid during the last war, and they will do again if Hitler targets Russia, as he is bound to do." "And?" "Jojo, if the official figures are used, it will make America or Britain or whoever is in a position to provide aid think that there are more reserves in the country than there actually are. Russia would be left to starve." Leo looks at her. "Whatever happens, you must never tell anyone." She leans over and kisses him on the cheek. "I promise." Late August, and the newspapers are full of war, Chamberlain, and the German-Russian non-aggression pact. Joan is waiting for Sonia in a cafe in town. She orders a coffee, and then wishes she had opted for a weak tea, but she does not really want anything. She can feel a light film of sweat clinging to her skin. Sonia arrives 5 minutes later. She is wearing a cape covered in a red tulip pattern. Even the dullness of the cafe cannot dim the gleam of her as she comes in. "What's the matter with you?" she asks. "You look terrible." "It's just a bug," Joan says. "It'll pass." "If you say so." "Leo didn't show up at the meeting last night," Sonia remarks. "Oh." Joan glances at her. "Have you seen him? Has he said anything about me?" "I take it he's still not talking to you, then?" Joan shakes her head. "I don't know why he's taking it so personally." "He'll come round," Sonia says, her voice sticky with sympathy. "It's obvious that the treaty with Hitler is just a tactical move by Stalin. He's just buying time, and we need time." Joan lowers her head. It feels heavy, and her eyes hurt. "Not we," she whispers. "They. We're no longer on the same side." That sort of comment is exactly why Leo is cross with you. Sonia takes out her silver cigarette case. She glances at Joan. "Are you all right?" A gulp of air. "I'm fine." Sonia observes her for a moment. It's not a bug, is it? She is scrutinising Joan's stomach, watching how her hand rests delicately against it. Oh, Sonia, I don't know. I haven't been to a doctor yet. Is there any need? How late are you? There are tears now, threatening to rise up. 5 weeks. Sonia hesitates. Leo? Yes. Have you told him? Joan shakes her head. Good. That's a relief. You mustn't. Really? But I want to. I was just waiting until I was sure, and until he stopped being so angry with everything. Sonia laughs. Joe, what on earth is it you think he's going to say? Do you think he'll go all gooey over this and ask you to marry him? There is a silence. Sonia is looking at her and shaking her head. Oh, God, come on, Joan. Surely you don't really believe that. He's got a war to fight, in case you hadn't noticed. Joan frowns at her. But we're not at war. Chamberlain said... Rot, Sonia interrupts. You will be soon, whatever anyone says. Anyway, I wasn't talking about Britain's war against Hitler. I'm talking about Leo's own war. The struggle. She opens her cigarette case again and then takes a thin scrap of cigarette paper from the bottom of the tin. She writes something on the paper and then slides it across the table. Joan takes it. What's this? An address. Joan breathes out. She feels a wave of nausea build and break inside her. She looks up at Sonia. I can't do that. And anyway, it's illegal. I could go to prison for it. Sonia laughs. Of course you wouldn't. Everybody does it. Really? Joan hesitates over the next question. Have you? Sonia looks at her. No. There are ways, you know. And I've been lucky so far. She sits back and smiles at Joan. Comforting. Encouraging. But I would if I had to. Joan cannot speak. Of course, Sonia is saying now, her voice seeming to come from a great distance, although she's only there, an arm's stretch away. It's your decision. Sonia knows the way. Number 41, down here on the left. She walks faster than Joan, a few steps ahead. You're doing the right thing, Sonia tells her, as they turn in through the front gate. And Leo would be grateful if he knew. He'd respect you for it. Not that I think you should tell him. The house is small and poky. There is a crucifix on the wall and a portrait of the Virgin Mary. Joan looks away. How many weeks is it? A woman's voice asks from the top of the stairs. 5.5 weeks late, Joan says. She is so scared, so sick, so sorry. Her hand is on her stomach again. Come on then, up you come. The woman holds the door of a room open at the top of the stairs.
Tuesday, 5:09 a.m. Joan rubs her eyes. It is not yet dawn, and it has been an uneasy night. The electronic tag rubs against her ankle. She touches it, her fingers light against the mechanism. She remembers her room in Newnham during the days following her visit to the woman's house. So many memories dredged up from nowhere, jostling with each other for her attention. She remembers lying perfectly still, immovable, shivering. She has a sudden memory of Sonia bringing mugs of warm milk and blankets to her room. "Have you seen Leo?" she would ask every time Sonia came in. "Just rest," she would whisper. "Don't worry about him." And another memory of Sonia arriving with armfuls of hydrangea, pink and white and blue, and filling jam jar after jam jar with these beautiful, delicate bursts of colour, so that the whole room seemed to be brimming with gemstones. And then she made her announcement.
I'm leaving for Switzerland tomorrow. Sonia says. I need to get out before the war starts. Why? I'm not British like you. I have a Russian passport. If I stay and Britain ends up fighting against the Soviets, I could be deported or interned. Is Leo going too? Sonia stands up from the bed and walks to the window. Leo? No, he won't come. Joan hears this with a mixture of relief and concern. Why not? Sonia sighs, and Joan can tell that Sonia is annoyed with him for not going with her. Some nonsense about his thesis. He needs to be here so that he can have access to the documents he needs. She rolls her eyes. Apparently it will cost millions of Soviets their lives if Leo doesn't finish his PhD. I didn't realise how deluded he was. I don't know who he thinks has told him that he's the only person who can save the revolution. Grigori Vi... something, Joan murmurs, sinking back into the pillow. Her head is hot and clammy. Leo said it would only matter if it came to war. Sonia does not answer immediately. She steps towards her and takes her hand once more. Who? She asks gently. A man he met in Moscow. He showed him that the grain figures were lying. She corrects herself. Misleading. Sonia doesn't move. Her hand feels suddenly cold. Lying? Oh God, Joan remembers now. He had made her promise. Misleading, she repeats. He told me not to tell anyone. Please, please don't tell Leo I told you. About this Grigori Vi something? Yes, she whispers. Sonia does not move for a long time. Even her breathing seems to slow and then stop altogether. Of course I won't tell. You don't have to worry. She leans forward and kisses Joan's cheek.
She remembers the unfilled days after Sonia had gone to Switzerland, the unnatural calm of her life as she convalesced. She thinks of her reunion with Leo once she was well again, her secret remaining unknown between them, something to be forgotten and ignored, so that their lives could carry on as before. She remembers the fervour with which he clung to the idea that Stalin's pact with Hitler was indeed a tactical manoeuvre, just as Sonia had said, and how jubilant he was at the dawning realization that his thesis really would be useful to the revolution now that war was bound to come. And she remembers how it felt to know that his gaze was on her once again, his hands in her hair and his lips on her skin. Such attention all the more necessary after having been withdrawn for so many weeks. A car, footsteps on the path. The sounds are familiar now. The knock comes 5 seconds later, as she knew it would. She knows she should not keep them waiting, and yet she does. Just for a moment. Because she finds that if she closes her eyes now, she can still recall the scent of those flowers on her windowsill, heady and sweet, smelling of cut grass and honey.
In the spring of 1940, the bombing starts, and there is a roundup of enemy aliens. Leo is arrested and marched off to the police station, along with a significant proportion of the science faculty. Look after my papers, Jojo, he instructs as he is taken away. I will. Her eyes fill with tears. It could be years before they see each other again, and she wants something more from him than this. Leo? Yes? Her voice is small and hopeful. I'll miss you. He takes a step towards her and kisses her too quickly. I'll miss you too, Jojo. He is sent to an internment camp on the Isle of Man, and thence to Canada. Leo writes to her, reporting that the camp is clean and bright, and the air smells of pine needles. once again. She takes comfort from the fact that the frequency of his letters must at least indicate that he thinks of her often. But she wishes he would say something a bit, well, softer. Final examinations come and go. Not long after this, a letter arrives from the Metals Research Facility in Cambridge, summoning Joan to report for an interview the following Monday. Leo has written, telling her to expect this, having learnt something of the project from a fellow internee, whom Leo has persuaded to recommend Joan for the post. Apparently, Joan is the perfect candidate, although he is not very forthcoming on what the job actually entails. She knows only that it is essential to the war effort, that it is not a research post, but still requires detailed scientific knowledge. She also knows that her physics tutor has been approached by her future employers to inquire if she is up to the task. She has been to these laboratories before as an undergraduate, but never into the secure section where she goes now. She is told to report to reception, where she is to wait for Professor Max Davies, the director of the research facility. She sees him before he sees her. She has heard his name mentioned in the science department before, always spoken with a degree of awe. He is good-looking, in a conventional sort of way. When he meets her in the drafty reception room, he seems to spring across the room at her, insisting as he shakes her hand that she call him Max rather than Professor or anything of that nature. "Let me take you to my office, and we can have a look at the lab on the way." Max is reading from a wad of papers as they walk. "It says here that you like to attend communist marches, talks, that sort of thing while you were a student." Joan does not break her stride as she looks up at him. "Oh, yes," she says, answering directly as she has planned. It was Leo's advice, of course, to think about how she would tackle this question if it should ever arise. She had guessed that this job would require security clearance, given that it is classed as a war job, and had decided in advance that she would admit some interest in the cause if asked, hoping to explain it away as youthful optimism mixed with academic interest. Yes, I was rather interested in that sort of thing, intellectually. And now? Now? Well, times have changed since then. She will not look away. Not yet. He nods. Well, I suppose the Nazi-Soviet pact saw to a lot of that. Bad idea, in my opinion. But I suppose Russia came out of the First War terribly hard. Poor buggers. Max is seemingly unfazed by what has just passed, and his reaction is considered, almost sympathetic, Joan thinks. They turn a corner, and he bounces ahead of her to push open a wooden door, holding it with his arm outstretched so that she can pass through. Her title is stated on her security pass. Personal assistant to the director of the Metals Research Facility in Cambridge. How dull that sounds. How disappointing to be using her science only in order to spell the elements in the periodic table. Apart from Max, there are 10 others in the department. Of these, 9 are men, leaving 1 other woman, Karen. Gradually, Joan finds that various tasks which were once Karen's, the morning tea run, stocking the biscuit tin, have been permanently delegated to her. The mood at the laboratory is one of urgency. From what Joan can gather, they are making some form of weapon. She does not imagine that it is a large weapon, given the size of the operations warehouse where construction is said to take place. Max gives her just enough information to do the work required of her, but he is not particularly expansive. She would not go so far as to say that she is disappointed in her lack of involvement, but she will admit that she had hoped for something a little more exciting. A security guard checks her bag on the way in and the way out. Henry, an old, whiskery man who gropes around apologetically in her bag every afternoon. What is he looking for, she wonders, as he relaxes, smiles, and nods her on her way. Stolen typewriter tape? Stamps? Envelopes?
Tuesday, 4:02 p.m. Ms. Hart is outside, talking to someone on her mobile phone, and Mr. Adams has gone to the shops to buy more coffee. Nick is standing at the window. "I can't believe I never knew," he says at last. "My own mother working on the atomic bomb. I'd never have thought—" He stops. "You've never even hinted at it. I remember asking what you did during the war, and you fobbed me off with your secretary's story." "But I was a secretary." Nick narrows his eyes at her. "Maybe, but not just a secretary, as you told me." "I couldn't have told you any more than that. I'd signed the Official Secrets Act." "As if that would have mattered by then. The bomb wasn't exactly a secret once everybody knew about it." He stops and turns to look at Joan. Joan leans forward, wanting to reach out to him, but retreating when she sees his expression. "Nobody said what they did during the war. They were different times. It's just such a shock. You never let on that you ever did anything like that. I feel as if I don't know who you are. It was in the past. Your father and I... Well, he didn't want it mentioned, and nor did I, really. I promised him." Nick acknowledges this point with an incline of his head, but he does not soften. "So he did know, then?" Joan nods. "Yes, he knew. That's why we moved to Australia." "But I thought you met on the boat going over to Australia." "Well, we knew each other before then, but we decided it would be easier if we pretended—" Nick makes an exasperated noise. "Is anything you've ever told me actually true?" "Everything I've told you that relates to you is true, I promise." She has told Nick this part before, that he was a new start for them, but she has never gone into the details of it. How much she had longed for him, ached for him, before their application for adoption was approved. She has always believed that knowing how much he was wanted would be too much of a burden for him, and so she has held it back. The hope and anguish of those years when they first arrived in Australia, before the doctor finally confirmed that, no, there was no chance of a baby from Joan's damaged womb, and had they thought about adoption? They were bypassed again and again, until one day Joan received a letter saying that their application had been successful. She will never forget the assault of emotion that hit her, when she first picked him up in her arms and felt Nick's soft, tiny hand close around her finger. But now Nick is standing in front of her with his arms crossed, his initial disbelief having turned to cynicism. "I still think you could have told me." "Like I said, nobody talked about what they did during the war. I didn't even tell my family." Nick looks at her. "But Leo knew, didn't he?" Joan blinks. She knows that nothing has been proven. She doesn't have to say anything. "No," she says. But the hesitation is too long.
Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. Part 3. The restaurant is made up of rows of dark wood-panelled booths with red tablecloths. Leo is holding her hand across the table. "Can't you just tell me the basics? I only want to know what you're doing." Joan shakes her head. "I'm not telling you anything. It's the rules." If Leo is disconcerted by her refusal to tell him everything, he does not show it. He glances at the wine list, most of which is crossed through where stocks have run out and cannot be replenished. "Red?" he asks. Joan knows it will be expensive. "Can you afford it?" "Special occasion." He does not look at her as he says this. The wine is opened and poured. So, Leo says when the waiter is out of earshot, I guess it's time I came clean about a few things. I need your help. That's why I'm here. Joan feels her face flaring hot and then cold. I thought you were here. Yes, I know, he interrupts, to collect my papers. Is it possible that he doesn't realise how much his words hurt her? I thought you came back because you wanted to see me. Well, that's the second thing. His expression changes when he says this. How could I go for so long without seeing my little comrade? Joan smiles, but she is suddenly unconvinced. So will you help? We need designs, documents, research. She narrows her eyes. How did you know about... She looks around and covers her mouth with her hand before continuing. About the project. It doesn't matter. The point is, Churchill promised that all technological advances would be shared between Britain and the USSR. He's not keeping that promise. He sits back. This isn't about saving the revolution. It's about saving the world. Joan stares at him. You want me to smuggle the research out? You want me to steal? Not steal, he says in a softer voice. Replicate. Share. Joan doesn't move. The thought flashes across her mind that this is why he has written to her all this time, because he thinks he can persuade her to do whatever he asks. His hand is on hers across the table. This is your chance to make a difference. There are no sides any longer. Not once this thing exists. This isn't the sort of weapon only one side should have. A whole nation can be destroyed in a single swoop. It's inhumane. Joan looks down. I won't do it. You shouldn't have asked. The waiter returns to refill their wine glasses. When he is gone, Leo raises his glass. He clears his throat in a conciliatory manner. A toast, anyway. Joan raises her eyes to meet his, and, in that moment, she realises it is hopeless. It always has been. He has never once told her he loves her because the reason is suddenly glaringly obvious. He does not. To the future, Leo says. Joan's chest aches as she holds out her glass to his. She had not known it could hurt this much. I'm not going to change my mind. You'll come round. I know it. No, Leo. I won't do it. She lifts her glass to his and they drink, silently, their eyes locked on one another. And then a single spot of red wine spills onto her dress.
Tuesday, 7:32 p.m. In the bathroom of her house, away from the questioning, and alone for just a brief moment, Joan turns on the cold tap. She remembers those long days after Leo went back to Canada, to his research post at the University of Montreal, when she allowed herself to weep as she never had before, and never would again. The war had continued to drag on in its dreary, terrifying manner. She did not write to Leo, and he did not write to her, and Sonia's letters dried up at around the same time. That might have been the end of it, if Sonia had not come home when she did, turning up in the late spring of 1944 with Jamie, having married him in Geneva, and persuaded him to live with her in a farmhouse in Ely. When they met, Sonia introduced Joan to him as her best friend, and their old friendship was resumed as if Sonia had never been away. Once again, it was Sonia whose clothes she borrowed, Sonia who was her dearest, greatest friend, and Sonia who was the first to hear about it when Joan found out that she was being sent to the University of Montreal on a research trip. The trip to Canada was, according to Max, an opportunity for the British research plant and the Montreal laboratory to work on a strategy for future collaborations, not to be mentioned to a single soul. When Joan mentioned the trip, Sonia tilted her head to look at her, with a hint of mischievousness in her eyes.
Will you see Leo when you go over there? No, Joan said, trying to appear shocked at the very thought, as if it had not even crossed her mind. Really? Sonia said, looking away with a slight smile twitching on her lips. How's his thesis going anyway? If you ask him, he'd think he'd invented a cure for cancer. So he's finished it? Sonia's eyes betrayed some degree of irritation. He's advising the American and Canadian governments on Russian aid. But that's wonderful. It's what he wanted. Sonia shook her head. There is such a thing as pride, Jojo. The Soviet Empire doesn't need American help. Leo thinks they're going to be grateful, but... She stopped, deciding against whatever it was she was about to say.
There is a knock on the bathroom door. Time to resume. Mr. Adams' voice is abrupt. Joan wonders once more about Sonia. If she is still alive. If she ever thinks of her. If she is standing alone in a bathroom somewhere, observing how her skin flakes and sags, and wondering how she ever got so old.
The voyage to Canada passes more quickly than Joan had anticipated. She and Max do crosswords together and take walks on the deck. And when they are not doing either of these things, they seem to be eating or just talking. It is an odd sort of complicity. After dinner on the last evening, the music has halted for the announcement that land has been sighted. There is applause from some of the tables and a fresh burst of music, but Max frowns and bends forward, studying the swirl of coffee in the bottom of his cup. That's a shame, he murmurs. I was starting to think this might go on forever. Joan takes a gulp of red wine. She has drunk more than she usually would and can feel a slight giddiness rising to her head. She glances at Max. I think your wife might have something to say about that. He shrugs. I don't think she would. We don't see much of each other as it is. Joan has heard this already from Karen, keeper of the switchboard, but she decides to pretend not to know. I'm sorry to hear it. They fall silent, and then Max asks, How about you? I find it hard to imagine you don't have a whole host of suitors trying to marry you. Are none of them up to the task? Joan thinks of Leo, of his eyes on that last night, hard and unknowable. She pushes this thought away, down, down. She will not think of him. Not now. There was, once, I thought I would marry him. And? He never asked. Well, for what it's worth, he sounds like an idiot. Just then, a young man in a sailor's uniform taps Max on the shoulder. He says something to Max, who laughs and leans towards Joan. This young chap would like to know if I'll allow you to dance with him. She grins. And will you allow it? She looks at him and sees, quite suddenly, that he is anxious she might say yes. There is a sudden flutter of desire in Joan's chest, and she finds herself wondering what it would be like to kiss him. Really kiss him. She takes a deep breath. Then tell him no. You absolutely won't allow it. Max turns back to the sailor. How did he take it? I expect he'll recover. Well, of course I had to make something up. I couldn't just reject him outright. So what did you say? Max leans a little closer, his eyes fixed on hers. I said I wanted you to myself. He holds out his hand and Joan takes it, following him onto the dance floor. The music changes, slowing a little. She lifts her eyes, and then they are kissing, and it is the best, most perfect kiss she has ever known. Come to my cabin. Max looks at her. Are you sure? She grins up at him and laces her fingers into his. Joan and Max will be staying at the atomic energy plant at Chalk River in the depths of Ontario for 3 weeks. Max is to work closely with Alan Curl, a quiet, colourless physicist who is in charge of developing samples of uranium-235 and uranium-233, while Joan is to assist with the smaller tasks, copying, filing, taking notes. In the evenings, a large communal meal is served. On previous evenings, the men have stayed behind after dinner to smoke and drink whiskey, but tonight Max leaves with Joan, and they walk together, both of them slightly dizzy with wine. "Joan," he says, and then stops. "Yes?" "I want to tell you something. I want to tell you. I love you." The declaration is so unexpected that at first Joan thinks he cannot mean it. She hits him lightly on the chest. "Don't be silly." "I'm not being silly." She moves towards him and kisses him on the lips. She stands in front of him and waits for him to kiss her back. Only he does not. "I love you. I can't stop thinking about you. I want to..." He raises his hand in a gesture of despair. "That's why I don't want to have an affair with you. Do you see? I love you." He takes her hand in his, and she realises that what he has just said is probably the most romantic thing anyone will ever say to her. "You deserve more than that. And maybe, one day..." He stops, and then, very slowly, he leans forward so that Joan feels the lightest graze of his lips against hers. And for that brief moment, it feels like the saddest way of one person touching another it is possible to imagine. And that is it. Nothing more is said on the matter. It is not awkward between them as Joan fears, but peaceful. They work together diligently and finish ahead of schedule, and it is decided that they will stop in Montreal for a night on the way back to Quebec. It is arranged for them to be shown around the theoretical department at the university before they sail home. Well, it is highly unlikely that Joan will bump into Leo. There is no reason for her to feel scared, no reason for her fingers to tremble like this. She excuses herself when they arrive, wanting to sort out her hair before the meeting, and she is encouraged to find she has the ladies' lavatory to herself. She is in a cubicle when she hears someone else enter the room. The footsteps on the tiled floor cause her to hesitate. It is a rhythm she recognises. "Jojo," the voice whispers. The breath catches in her throat. What is Leo doing in here? How did he know where she would be? She takes a deep breath, slides back the bolt on the door and steps out. "My little comrade," he says, kissing her dryly on the cheek. "How are you?" "How did you know where I was? Why didn't you just leave a message instead of lurking out there like that?" Leo shrugs. "It is better if nobody sees us talking to each other." Joan tries to quell the confusion of feelings inside her. "So you're here on a research trip?" She nods. "Listen, Jojo. I came because I had to see you. I thought you might have changed your mind." "No," she whispers. "I've already told you I won't do it." "Is that the only reason you wanted to see me?" "Of course not, Jojo." He puts out his hand to touch her face, and she does not move away. "You're my little comrade. You always will be." Joan feels her heart quicken, but will not allow herself to believe him. "The bomb should be shared. The Russians should be allowed to know. I know you agree with me, really." "No, I don't." There are tears brimming, pulsing behind her eyes. "I have to go. They're waiting for me." "You'll come round, Jojo. I know you better than you think." "No." She walks to the door and opens it. Her whole body trembles as she hurries down the corridor, and as she gets to the meeting room door, Max flings it open. "Oh, what happened to you? I was beginning to think you drowned." I was just... Joan falters. Max looks at her. He holds out his hand to her. It is a small gesture, but to Joan it feels like a hand reaching over a cliff, offering to tug her up. She takes his hand and squeezes it.
Wednesday, 9:03 a.m. Nick is not looking at her. He has taken the folder from Ms. Hart, and his eyes are scanning the index of documents. Ms. Hart indicates the file in Nick's hands. "Our source is completely reliable. There are identical copies of these files stored in the KGB archives." Ms. Hart stands up and gestures to Mr. Adams to do the same. "We'll resume in 30 minutes. Mr. Adams follows Ms. Hart outside, shutting the door behind him. There is a clock on the mantelpiece, and Joan can hear the soft whir of time passing. "You did this, didn't you?" Nick whispers. "Shh," Joan says, her hands patting the air in front of her in a nervous gesture. "Why? Why would you do it?" His face is incredulous now, as the enormity of the accusation sinks in. There are tears glistening in his eyes. "Why?" he asks again. Joan looks up at her son, wishing with every cell of her body that there was something else she could say right now. But there isn't, and so very softly she whispers a single word. "Hiroshima."
The first test of the atomic bomb takes place in America during the height of summer in 1945, not long after the conclusion of hostilities in Europe. "They've done it," Max announces that afternoon, after the news has been cabled to him and he's called everyone into his room for a meeting. "The Yanks have done it." It is no surprise that the Americans have got there first, but the response to the news in the laboratory is a collective gasp. It is not an exaggeration to say that something new has arrived on the planet, rewriting all the basic precepts of science in the process. And it is an incredible thing to know that they and their American counterparts have brought it into being. Donald is the first to address Max. "What now, then?" "They'll use it on Japan, I suppose," Max replies. Joan looks up with a start. "But they won't just drop it on them, will they? I mean, they'd have to be warned. It's supposed to be a deterrent, isn't it?" Max shrugs. "But we're at war. There's not much opportunity for a chat." The curtness of his response surprises Joan. It is not what she expected from him. Gentle, thoughtful Max, who she often catches quietly watching her while she works. "Of course there is," she says, and her voice is louder than normal. "They could stage another demonstration and invite Japan, and that would give them the chance to surrender." Donald snorts. "They wouldn't surrender, not Japan." "It's all hypothetical anyway," Max says. "You can't expect America not to use it now that they have a chance to end the war." "She's got a point, though," Arthur interjects. "Now it's bound to come out that we're making one here. Stalin will know. Russia will want one too." "We don't want Stalin having a weapon like this," Max says. "Why? In case he uses it?" Joan asks. "Yes." "Then what's the difference? We're going to use it against Japan. Why does it matter who's underneath it?" Joan pauses, suddenly aware that she has heard this argument before, only this time she seems to have changed sides. Although, what are the sides now? It no longer seems clear. Arthur sighs. "But we'd be using it to end a war, to save lives." "Not us," Max corrects him. "America," Joan looks at him, and she feels a spinning sensation inside her, as if a taut spring has suddenly snapped. "Oh, don't get upset," Donald says eventually. "The point is that it works. The science is correct." He grins. "Come on, let's have a drink and celebrate. Pub lunch, everyone?" "I don't see why not," Max says. 3 weeks and a day later, a uranium-235 bomb is dropped on the city of Hiroshima. The press reports will tell how it was so hot that some people simply vanished, swept off in a swirl of dust and ashes and debris. But there is no language that can really convey the truth of such destruction. The words do not exist. Or if they do, they are incomprehensible, because human sympathy cannot absorb that amount of suffering. But the people of Nagasaki are doomed to understand. 3 days later, a plutonium bomb hits the city, and Japan surrenders. Joan hears the news at the laboratory with everyone else, and feels the stab of responsibility once more in her stomach. All around her, people are talking loudly and laughing. Bottles of champagne and beer are brought up from the cellar. Arthur produces a bin lid and a guitar which suffice to create enough noise to make this terrible occasion feel like a celebration. Which it is, in a sense. The war is over. She should at least try to be pleased. She forces a smile, taking a glass of champagne. She feels a hand on her shoulder, and she turns sharply. It is Max. "Dance with me." His eyes are sparkling. Joan shakes her head. "Please. Just one dance." She cannot do it. If she really tries, she can drink more champagne when it is forced upon her, and talk about how wonderful it is that the war has ended. She can force her mouth to smile, and she can push down the giddy, sickening sensation that comes from knowing that they have just been party to a terrible, evil act. But she cannot dance with Max. He must have known from the start, she thinks. He must have known what they were going to do. A week later, a telegram arrives for Joan at the laboratory, given to her by Max and written by her mother in the throes of grief so that no attempt is made to soften the blow. "Please come," it reads. "Father dead." The war is over, and most people have lost someone. But until this moment she has never known the wash of emptiness that comes from such finality. Max closes the door so that they are momentarily alone, and then he takes her in his arms. It is familiar and strange all at once. So much has changed since they last touched. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I'm sorry about everything." Everything, Joan thinks. About my father dying, yes. About your wife, maybe. But everything. "I wish I could come with you and look after you." "I'll be fine." And although she appreciates that he is trying to be kind, she finds that she cannot look at him. Sitting on the train to St. Albans and her parents' home, the countryside flickers past the train window. She thinks of Leo, and for the first time she understands that he is right. The war is over, and yet she knows that there can be no hope of peace in the future if one side alone has this weapon. All she has to do is give the information to Sonia. That's what Leo implied. Sonia would pass it on to whomsoever requires it, and beyond that... At this she falters. Beyond this, Joan cannot imagine. It sounds so simple, so easy. She feels a terrible stab of regret to know that in order to do this, the person she will have to betray is Max. There will be no going back once she has done this. He will never again hold her hands and tell her he loves her. There will be no lingering maybe left hanging between them. No hope of another perfect kiss. But did he not mislead her too? Did he not lie to her? Just a little? At the station, she fumbles in her bag for change. She walks to the nearest telephone box. "Hello? It's me, she says. I'm in St. Albans. I need to see you. Oh? Sonia's voice is soft, musical, as though she is smiling. Is it urgent? Yes, it is rather. I have something for you. I wondered if you would, Sonia says. If I leave now, I can be there by late afternoon. Meet me in the coffee shop by the cathedral at 4:30, Joan says. She replaces the receiver and feels a shiver of cold running through her. She waits for a moment, her hand resting on the receiver. She could stop it all now. She could call Sonia back and tell her not to come because she has changed her mind. But then she thinks of the terrible, mushrooming swirl of heat and ash in the pictures of Hiroshima, and she clasps her hands together across her body in a sort of prayer. Only it is not a prayer. It is an entreaty, a plea, a promise. It is a wash of conviction that rushes over her chest and causes her to inhale deeply until her lungs are full of air. After the flood, a covenant. Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. Part 4. All the papers produced by the research team are duplicated and numbered serially and stored in Max's heavy-duty metal cabinet. Joan has always done this in the meeting room at the end of the corridor, and now she agrees with Sonia that she can simply make an extra copy of anything that looks important, one to be filed and the other to be handed to Sonia at their monthly meeting, and then she can pass the information on. But to whom? Joan asks, when Sonia describes this stage of the process to her. Sonia raises an eyebrow. To a contact at the centre in Moscow. There is no time to dwell further on this, because she has moved on to issue general instructions, telling Joan that she must learn to be on the lookout for people following her. If you think someone is following you and you're coming to meet me, then you must hold your handbag by its strap in your left hand and pretend you don't know me. Not over your shoulder. Not in your right hand, in your left. Then I'll know. Joan nods, wide-eyed and suddenly fearful of what she has agreed to do. Sonia pauses. Don't worry, though. These are just precautions. As long as we're careful, there's no reason why anyone would ever suspect us. We have the perfect cover, after all. Have we? Of course we have. Who'd ever suspect us of doing this sort of thing? We're women. She puts the small Leica camera given to her by Sonia at the bottom of an old tea tin, hidden under a thin layer of metal, because occasionally there might be designs or documents that would be better photographed. These films can be slipped into the envelope along with the duplicates. She works harder and more diligently than before. She still chats with Karen and the scientists and technicians, but something is different about her, although nobody can be quite sure what it is. At the end of the month, she takes a train to Ely, as arranged between her and Sonia, a brown envelope tucked under her arm. She feels a small tremor of excitement at what she has begun. She knows that there is nobody else who can do what she is doing, nobody else with the same level of access and knowledge, apart from Max, of course. Is she frightened of getting caught? Yes, of course she is. If she stops to think about what she is doing, she is terrified.
Wednesday, 12:02 p.m. You mentioned that you met Curl in Canada, Miss Hart says. Did you have any notion then that he was sympathetic to the Russian cause? Joan shakes her head. I didn't ever really speak to him. He was very highly regarded as a scientist, though, I remember that. Miss Hart nods. Well, yes, and a very adept spy. Joan remembers the headlines plastered across the newspaper stands as she cycled into the laboratories that morning. Spy tips off. Spy tells all. She recalls recognizing Curl in the photograph under the screaming headlines, The details of his arrest, the tap at his bungalow door, the Canadian police officer asking if he might put a few questions to him. Ah, yes. Joan most certainly remembers reading about that.
When she arrives at the laboratory, everyone is already there. They are gathered in Max's room, standing, talking, reading aloud snippets from the newspapers. Max is standing behind the desk, his shirt crumpled, his eyes ringed by shadows. Their eyes meet across the room, and there is a hint of the closeness they have lost, ignited by this reminder of their trip to Canada. Then he looks away and raises his hands in an attempt to get everyone's attention. "You all know why we're here," he says. Silence hangs in the room. There is the atmosphere of a siege. Max says, "I think we all need to just get on as normal, as much as we possibly can. There's going to be a bit of press attention, and I believe the police are on their way here now, but it will pass." "That's enough gloom and doom for today," Karen calls out. "Joan, come over here and let's do the tea." Max smiles gratefully at Karen. There is a palpable release of tension as everybody turns to leave and resume business as normal. Oh, what an effort it is for Joan to give the impression that she is as stunned as the rest of them, which she is, in a way, and that she has no reason to rush. But it is hard to stop herself from moving fast. She feels giddy and out of control, as if she is careering downhill and the grass is slippery underfoot, too steep to stop. There are so many things she needs to do. Get to the meeting room. Find that brown envelope that she has already addressed and left stupidly, carelessly on the sideboard, stuffed full of duplicated documents. And then there is the camera, tucked away in the tea tin. Yes, she knows they are unlikely to look in there, but if they did, it would be quite a find. A small camera containing a roll of film with close-up snaps of the reactor design. She hurries to the kitchen and shuts the door behind her. Her heart is pounding. She lifts the false bottom of the tin and extracts the camera, slipping it into the depths of her handbag. She knows it is not safe there, or not safe enough. She will have time to come up with a better plan later, although she does not know what. The door handle turns behind her. A voice calls out to her. "Would you like some help with the tea?" She jumps and spins around. It is Karen. "I'm fine." Her expression is glassy. She is holding the tin, and the kettle is not yet on. She is suddenly aware of the danger of her position, of the need to act normal. "It's rather unsettling, isn't it?" Karen nods. "I don't know if it's all the stress of this, but I'm having terrible cramps today." Joan smiles sympathetically, and as she does, she sees that this is it. This is her chance. It's her cover. She fills the kettle with water, and then turns to Karen. "I'm really sorry to ask," she begins tentatively, "but do you have any spare sanitary towels? I've been caught short." "Of course. I'll leave a box in the lavatory for you." The police arrive just before noon. Joan is in the meeting room with the door closed when she hears unknown voices in the corridor. She does not look up. There is no time. She must finish what she has begun. She has a system. It is an imperfect system, but she can think of no better way of hiding the extra duplicates. She files them with their counterparts, having decided that it would be enough of a defence to claim she had copied a batch of documents twice by mistake the previous day. She hears footsteps in the corridor outside the room. The door handle turns. "Sorry to interrupt, miss." A policeman is standing in the doorway. "I need to take some of these files." Joan stands aside and gestures for him to take whatever he wishes. He turns back to Joan. "Is that your bag?" Joan glances down to the bag at her feet. She nods. "Mind if I take a look?" "Of course not." Dampness spreads across her back. He takes her purse and opens it. He shakes out a neck scarf, a novel, a lipstick. "Apologies, miss," he says. "Routine, I'm afraid." He opens the bag wider. It is almost empty, except for one item which seems to be wedged against the bottom of the lining. He lifts the bag up and turns it upside down, and then he shakes it until the tiny Leica camera falls out. Only it is no longer camera-shaped. It is a camera in disguise. It is a camera broken by a stiletto heel in the ladies' bathroom, ground into small pieces and then hidden inside 10 sanitary towels, each one slit open, packed, and then folded neatly, symmetrically, back into its original packaging. The man picks up the box. He frowns as he reads the packaging, and then reddens as he realises what it is, apologises, and puts it back in the bag. That was too close. It was reckless, stupid. She is cycling fast, her cheeks hot and her whole body shaking at the thought of how near they came. She passes the station and carries on until she reaches her road and turns in with relief. She props her bike against the front fence, opens the door, and then runs up the 64 stairs to her flat. There are 2 locks, a deadlock to be opened by a large bronze key, and then a smaller Chubb lock. She reaches down to the deadlock and takes hold of a single strand of dyed dark hair, one of her own. It is a trick Sonia taught her, to check that the lock has not been tampered with during her absence. The flat is in darkness when she enters. Joan takes off her coat. Her heart is still pounding a little too fast. She reaches out to switch on the light, and as it flickers to life, she sees a man's arm reflected in the mirror, draped lazily over the side of the sofa. A scream rises in her throat and sticks, so that the only noise she makes is a silent, terrified exhalation. All of a sudden she realises that whoever this is must have known to look for the hair in her lock. Who could Sonia have told about this trick? And why would she tell anyone? And then a voice. "Don't be scared, my little comrade. It's only me." Joan allows Leo to stay out of courtesy, because by the time they finish talking and have had something to eat, it is late, and he has missed the last train back to London. It is dawn when finally he comes to her room, and for a moment they are back at the same old impasse, and she knows what she should do. She should tell him to go away, and then turn around and go back to sleep. She opens her mouth to say exactly this, but then she closes it because she also knows that there is nothing she would like more than to feel the warmth of another body next to her, protecting her. It is such a lonely thing, having a secret like hers. In the darkness, Leo tilts his head, and, so slowly that the movement seems almost geological, Joan lifts a corner of her blanket and draws it back. She catches him watching her as she gets dressed that morning. He watches her, wafting her hand under the grill to check it is hot enough. She picks up the toast by its hot crust. "Do you want jam?" "Just butter." Of course, she thinks. How could she have forgotten? "Go on then," she says eventually. "Go on what?" Joan gestures around her. "This," she says. "You coming here. What did you really want?" He pauses. "I was worried about you. I wanted to warn you about Curl." "A bit late." "I know." He takes hold of her hands and holds them in both of his. "You need to be careful. You're the best they've got now. You're more important than you realise. Your safety is their top priority." "I'm always careful. You can ask Sonia. We take precautions." "Sonia doesn't know I'm here yet. You mustn't tell her you've seen me. I'll mention it to her when the time's right." "Just like the old days, then?" "Yes." Joan turns away from him, irritated by this. Why does she allow him to do this? To stroll back into her life and take up again as if he had never left, as if they had not spent the last 4 years at loggerheads, albeit from a distance. He is living in London, having secured a teaching fellowship at King's College, which enabled him to continue his research on Soviet planning policy. In addition to his university digs, Joan gave him a key to her flat, so that he can come and go as he pleases. And he has fallen into the habit of turning up whenever he can get away from his academic duties, to spend time with her. One night he telephones her. "Listen carefully. There's a concert at the Royal Albert Hall on Saturday afternoon. Your tickets to the box office. The others will pick up their own, so just collect yours and we'll meet in there. The others? Yes. I've told Sonia, Jojo. Joan smiles a wide, delighted smile. At last! She is 28 years old, for goodness sake. She shouldn't be creeping around with a secret boyfriend. She wasn't happy, he says, but I told her she needed to accept it. She shows her ticket to the usher, who indicates her allocated seat with his torch. There is a hush as the lights go down and the pit orchestra begins to tune. But where are they? She wonders. How late are they planning on arriving? As the conductor lifts his arm to hush the sound of the orchestra tuning, she sees 3 people making their way towards her row. Leo, Jamie, Sonia. She smiles, suddenly overcome with pleasure at the prospect of this evening. Leo reaches across and takes hold of Joan's hand in the dark. They sit like this for the whole of the first piece of music. Joan closes her eyes, feeling the calm of the music wash over her. The sound of applause breaks the spell. Leo's lips brush her ear. How are you, Jojo? She forces herself to smile up at him. Happy to see you. He smiles quickly. He leans towards her, and for a moment Joan thinks he might be going to reciprocate with some whispered sweetness. But he doesn't. He has something else to tell her. I've got some news. I've been invited back to Moscow. Moscow? You didn't mention anything on the telephone. I only found out today. He grins. Sonia's just told me. He's evidently pleased with this news, but Joan feels a sudden grip of fear. Does the party want to see you? She whispers. Leo nods. Of course. They've invited me. But why did they not just invite you directly instead of through Sonia? He shrugs this question away. It's quicker like this. They want me to deliver my research at a conference in Moscow next week. There'd be no time to send an invitation through the post. He beams briefly as he speaks. But Joan feels the hairs rise on her arms and neck. Joan tells herself she's being silly, but she cannot push from her mind the conviction that something here is not right. And Joan knows there will never be another moment quite like this. And if she doesn't say the words now, she may never say them. She leans across to Leo and whispers something in his ear. He smiles and kisses her slowly on the lips. And for that brief moment, Joan thinks her heart might actually burst. 3 weeks after the concert, Joan and Sonia are standing outside the newly built Guildhall in Cambridge town centre, Sonia's hands clasping Joan's. Leo. Shot. What do you mean, shot? Joan cannot take it in. I'm sorry, Jojo. He was declared an enemy of the people and they shot him. Shot? She pictures Leo's body, cast forward onto a concrete floor, blood spooling onto the floor beside him. A noise comes out of her then, neither a cry nor a sob, but a loud staccato burst of pain. Her whole body seems to crumple. Sonia tells her that the interrogation lasted 5 days. Joan burns to think of the pain they must have inflicted upon him. She has read about the special measures allowed during interrogations. The broken bones, the dislocations, the bright lights and loud noises, the terror. But why? She whispers. Sonia shakes her head. Who knows? But he's been quite critical of the regime. It did sometimes cross my mind that his research undermined the whole system. Joan stares at her. You don't believe them, do you? He didn't do anything wrong. He only published those results to prevent famine during the war. Joan's voice is raised, and she feels Sonia put her hands on her shoulders, trying to calm her and quieten her. Shh, Jojo. Not here. People can hear you. But she cannot be quiet. He wasn't a traitor. You know he wasn't. It was his whole life. Sonia shakes her head and puts her finger to her lips. I thought so too, she whispers. her voice soft and soothing. Too calm. Joan will think later. But it's like I told you. Trust no one.
Wednesday, 7:35 p.m. Nick stares at Joan, disbelief evident in his face. Is it true? Did they actually kill him? Joan nods slowly. There is a pain spreading through her whole body at the memory. Nick looks at Joan, and for a brief moment Joan detects a flicker of sympathy mixed in with the anger. But why? With respect, Miss Hart interrupts, Stalin ordered the execution of millions of people. I don't think he was particularly fussy. She takes a piece of paper from the file. In this case, the KGB report from Leo's interrogation was included in one of the files smuggled out by our defector. I can read it out to you, Miss Hart offers. Citizen Leo Galich was today found guilty of attempts to undermine the Soviet Empire with his campaign of misinformation in relation to the Soviet agricultural policies and his work with the Canadian government during the Great Patriotic War. His connection to citizen Grigory Fyodorovich. At this, Joan emits a small cry. Miss Hart glances at Joan, who is sitting with her hand over her mouth. She continues to read. His connection to citizen Grigory Fyodorovich was denied to the bitter end, but the evidence we received from Agent Silk is utterly trustworthy, and so for this reason we know for a fact that citizen Galich is a liar as well as a traitor. He is hereby sentenced to immediate death by firing squad. Joan opens her mouth and closes it again. There is something she desperately needs to ask, but her voice breaks and croaks as she tries to speak. "Who's Agent Silk?" she whispers. She hears Miss Hart's voice, but really she does not need to be told. Sonia. Sonia was the only other person who knew about Grigory Fyodorovich. She imagines Leo denying all knowledge of him, even though it would not have saved him anyway. Always so stoic, so brave, the cause above all else. With this comes an earlier memory of his triumphant return after that first trip to Moscow, when he told her what he had learned from Grigory Fyodorovich, and how he had insisted that she must never, ever tell anybody. And Joan is hit by the realization that when Leo was dragged out to the execution yard all those years ago, he must have believed it was she who had betrayed him.
Those first few months after Leo's death pass in a blur for Joan. Blank, sleepless passages of time through which she gropes her way. At the laboratory, she continues to make copies of everything. It is habit, she supposes, which keeps her doing this. But she knows that this is not the only reason. She does it because she is scared. She is scared they might come for her next. But when the time comes for her next appointment with Sonia, she does not turn up. The same happens the next time, and the next. Quite simply, she wants out. Eventually, Sonia comes to visit her one Sunday morning. Sonia walks into the living room and surveys her surroundings while Joan makes a pot of tea. "You haven't been coming to our appointments." "It's not safe," Joan says eventually. "There's less to worry about now, you know." "In what way?" Sonia hesitates. "Now that Leo's gone, I mean." Joan stares at her. "MI5 are onto him, Jojo. It was only a matter of time before they found you, especially if you got married." "Married? Did he say that?" Sonia turns away so that Joan cannot see her face. "It's just a figure of speech." No, it's not. Joan wonders what she would have said if he had asked. Sonia puts her arms around her. I'm just saying I don't want you to feel vulnerable. But they do ask about you. They want to know why you've stopped. And then she says, you should try not to upset them too much. Why? Would they send someone to find me? Not yet, Jojo. I'm just warning you. All I've heard is that they're so close to being finished, and the documents you send are so useful. You can leave, I promise, once the project is completed. What do you mean, leave? She shrugs. I'll make sure they know you're no longer available. Can't you do that now? Sonia looks at her. Just a bit longer, Jojo. On the dry grasslands of the Kazakh steppe, a bomb explodes above a village, an explosion big enough to rival the little boy Hiroshima bomb. It is a bomb to make Stalin proud. It is a bomb to make everyone stop, hold their breath, keep a finger hovering on the trigger, aiming but not firing, waiting to see who's going to blink first. Eventually a statement is issued by 10 Downing Street declaring that His Majesty's government have evidence that in recent weeks an atomic explosion has taken place in the USSR. Joan goes into the small kitchen at the laboratory and locks the door behind her. She leans against the wall. Was this because of me? She wonders. Did I do this? She feels a pinch of fear at the enormity of what she has done. It swirls inside her, a terrible giddiness that forces her to steady herself against the tiled wall. She thinks of Hiroshima, of the heat, the bodies, the terrible mushroom cloud of ash above the city, of Leo's words back at the beginning of it all. There are no sides any longer, not once this thing exists. But she has seen the strength of it. Can Stalin really be trusted with such a weapon? Would he really keep such a powerful thing in reserve and never use it? She is suddenly unsure, and a hot sweat breaks out across her back, a creep of fear at the thought of what an explosion of that magnitude might do in Britain. Later, as more information comes out, the British will say that it was based on the American design. But this is not quite true. There are documents in the archive that suggest the USSR project was heavily influenced by the British design. Impossible. Britain will declare in talks with America, we're tight, but neither of them will believe it. They know there is a leak, and they have to find it. Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. Part 5. Max is sitting at the desk with his head in his hands. He's been sitting in this position ever since the announcement of the leak was made. He cannot take it in, that his project has been trumped like this. Even when Joan appears at the door, slipping around it and pushing it shut behind her, Max does not move. They're here, she says. He gazes up at her, momentarily mute. Max, I don't think you understand. The police are here. They have a warrant for your arrest. He looks at her, puzzled. They think there's a leak at the top. That's ridiculous. Surely they need some evidence to make that kind of assertion. Yes, she thinks, they do. And perhaps they have. But at the same time, she has to hold on to the possibility that there cannot be any real evidence. As if there was, surely it would be her they would want, not Max. And Sonia would have warned her, wouldn't she? Or William. Didn't William say he would? Max takes a step towards her. They look at each other, and Joan feels her lower lip begin to quiver. Don't cry, he whispers. It's just routine. There is a sort of resigned weariness about him, as if he knows that he must be stronger than he feels. He glances up. his eyes searching to meet Joan's gaze. And then he leans forward and kisses her softly. That same afternoon, an official charge is brought against Professor Maxwell George Davis.
I knew it! Nick smashes his hand against the windowsill. Nick, wait, Joan says. It's Dad, isn't it? He worked on the bomb too, and he didn't bother to mention it to me either. He shakes his head. I always thought he was too much of an academic to be teaching at that school. But he liked it there. He didn't want to be working on the bomb anymore, or have anything to do with it. And you, Nick, he adored you. But you let them come and arrest him. There was no evidence against him, so I thought they'd just let him go. Just tell me one thing. Are you sorry? Do you regret it? I thought the information should have been shared with Russia after Hiroshima. I thought it needed to be made fair so that it didn't happen again. Why can't you just admit that it was the wrong thing to do, that it was bad? Leo was bad. Sonia was bad. They weren't bad, she whispers. How can you be so naive? Sonia didn't care about you. She betrayed Leo, her own cousin, just to keep you as a source. Joan shakes her head. No, she didn't mean to. But Nick doesn't stop. She knew that MI5 were onto him. It was only a matter of time before they worked out he was seeing you, and then your information would dry up too, and she wanted to protect that. But she loved him. Why would she do something so callous? Nick shrugs in an exasperated manner. Because she was jealous. No, Sonia wasn't the type. For God's sake, even now, you still think she's some sort of superhuman. He shakes his head. Did she ever get caught? Oh, no, let me guess. She didn't. She got away. She just left you to clear up the whole bloody mess. Am I right? And then she nods her head.
There is a stunned silence in the laboratory. Nobody can quite believe Max has been arrested. It is impossible to know if they have any evidence at all. The only thing she can be certain of is the knowledge that she has to leave Cambridge. And first of all, she needs to see Sonia. Sonia in Jamie's farmhouse is quiet when she arrives. The car has gone. She goes around to the back and knocks gently on the glass. Nothing. She tries the door handle, and to her surprise, it is unlocked. She goes in. There are no toothbrushes in the bathroom. No lipsticks by the mirror. She goes to open the wardrobe. There are gaps and spaces where clothes might once have been. She rakes her gloved hand along them until she comes to something familiar. Her mink fur, hanging at the end of the rail. That's where it got to. She always suspected Sonia of having taken it. She slips it off the hanger and folds it over her arm. As she does so, she notices that it has been concealing a cardboard box. She pulls off the lid, unleashing a puff of dust and revealing a small pile of photographs. She flicks through the pile, just to verify absolutely that there is nothing incriminating, and almost at once a picture of a boy catches her eye. It is Leo as a child. It must be. He is perhaps 6 years old. His features are less pronounced, but he still looks so like the man she once loved. She flicks through the rest of the photographs. In each one, the same boy. There are numbers scribbled on the backs of the photographs, which at first Joan assumes to be dates. The first photograph reads 30/06/46, which would mean it was taken 3.5 years ago. She frowns. Not a date, then. Something else. There is a small pile of larger, more faded pictures at the bottom of the box, which Joan recognises as having been taken at Cambridge while they were undergraduates. There is one in which William is kissing Rupert on the mouth. Not a chaste, joking kiss, but a proper kiss. Two men locked in a passionate embrace. Joan stares at this picture, wondering how it was that she never guessed at the time. She puts the photographs back in the box. She knows Sonia will not come back. She has gone for good, without even saying goodbye. She knows she cannot stay here. What if someone saw her come in? She stands up and hurries to the bedroom door. But then a thought occurs to her. She turns back to the wardrobe and extracts a single photograph from the cardboard box. She slips it into the pocket of her fur coat. And as she does, she feels a terrible flush of shame at the knowledge of what she might do with it.
Thursday, 4:44 p.m. The name is illegible, a blue-inked scrawl across the bottom of the paper. "Did you ever hear from Sonia again?" Miss Hart asks. "No," Joan whispers. "Never." She does not look up. She is staring at the piece of paper. "But I don't understand. She didn't have a son. She never mentioned—" Nick groans suddenly and sinks his head into his hands. "What? Nick?" He shakes his head, but he does not reply. Instead, he turns to Miss Hart. "You knew all of this at the start." Miss Hart nods. "This is cruel. This could kill her." "What could?" Joan asks. The room falls silent. Nobody speaks. She feels a terrible blackness rising within her. "The boy," she thinks. "The boy in the photographs. It wasn't Leo. The dates weren't wrong." "Excuse me," Joan whispers. She goes to the bathroom and closes the door, and then sits on the side of the bath trying to hold herself in. She realizes that if this child was born in 1940, as Miss Hart had said, then that would fit exactly with Sonia's sudden departure for Switzerland in the late summer of 1939, and her period of silence at the beginning of 1940, after Sonia took her to that horrible woman's house, when she sat by Joan's bedside and nursed her back to health. She remembers Leo's despair over Stalin's pact with Hitler. She can imagine how he might have turned to Sonia then, she being the only one who would really have understood the depth of this betrayal, the only one who had seen what it was like in Germany, how they had suffered, and Leo in particular. Sonia had even warned Joan at the time that she was not being sympathetic enough. But Joan had not heeded the warning. Joan cannot believe she had been so blind, so stupid. Nick taps on the bathroom door. After a few seconds he opens it. "Are you okay?" Joan does not answer. He sits next to her on the side of the bath. "Look, I've been thinking. I'm still, well, angry is putting it mildly. I'm not sure that things will ever go back to normal, between us, I mean. But I've decided that I will help you, but you have to do as I say." He waits for Joan to respond. Another silence. "Tell them it was Sonia," he says. "We can just say that Sonia stole the documents from you and radioed them to Russia. And tell them that you think William killed himself because he was guilty. You just have to give them what they want. They want me. No, they don't. They just want someone. They practically told you at the beginning that there was room for leniency if they got what they needed." His voice is low and urgent. "Don't you see? It's embarrassing for MI5 that you weren't found before. So let them have William. He's dead anyway, isn't he? And tell them that Sonia tricked you." Joan feels her heart burning with love for her son, for the fact that he is sitting here now in her bathroom, and he still believes she has a chance. "I'm sorry, Nick. I can't." "Why not?" "Because it's not true," she whispers. There is a pause while Nick takes this in. So you're telling me you won't even try? Joan shakes her head. I can't. Well then, Nick says eventually, his voice cold and hard. Looks like you're on your own. Friday, 4:43 a.m. Joan is in bed, but she's not asleep. The sting of Nick's abrupt departure is still raw, twisting in Joan's stomach. His words echo in her mind, and once again she wonders if it might be better if she simply doesn't wake up tomorrow. Better for her, better for Nick. She imagines for a moment that she might do it, not with sleeping pills, but with the St. Christopher's medal given to her by William as a parting gift. Just in case, he had written in the accompanying note, and she had been appalled by the very idea. Even if she had thought about it, she would not have pictured it happening like this, not after so many years. But then again, she had never thought William would do it either. She knows that she needs to order her thoughts in readiness for the press conference later that day. All night she has lain awake, but the piece of paper upon which her statement is supposed to be written remains blank.
Joan goes to the visitors' entrance of the prison and is greeted by a man in a peaked cap. I'm here to see Professor Max Davis. Here you go, he says. Prisoner Davis. First door on the left. Joan takes the form he is holding out to her. She steps through the gateway and presents her form to another man who instructs her to follow him. Eventually he stops at a heavy door of reinforced metal and pushes it open. Wait here, he says. Joan nods. She closes her eyes. She waits. The door opens behind her, and there he is. His hair is cut short. There is a prisoner number on his chest, and when he sees her, his face breaks into a smile. She wants to sink to her knees at the knowledge that she has done this to him, but she knows that this would not help either of them, and so she does not. He steps towards her and reaches out to take her in his arms. You came. I didn't think you would. No touching, the guard says. Max's arms drop to his sides. It's so good to see you. Joan swallows. You too. He sits down at the table and Joan goes to sit opposite him. So, I said I had some news. I got a letter from my wife. Oh? She's finally agreed to the divorce. His face breaks into a grin, and he reaches out his hand to her across the table. If I'd known that was all I needed to do, I'd have got myself arrested years ago. I'd ask you to marry me right now, only I want to wait until I've been cleared, and then... He stops. Well, what is it? Why are you crying? Joan is clutching her bag to her chest, and there is a slipping, shifting feeling inside her, as if something inside her is breaking in two. I can't, Max. I can't marry you. Why not? I'll get out of here. I haven't done anything. I know. Then what is it? Why are you crying? The words stick in her throat. She hears him ask the guard for just a minute alone. It is just the two of them now in the room, and she feels his arms slipping around her, holding her, calming her, until her sobs have softened. She has to tell him now. There may never be another chance. She holds him tightly against her, her lips brushing his ear, and she whispers the words oh so gently into his neck. It was me. Max's arms grow slack around her body. You. Joan nods. Her whole body is shaking. I'm going to confess, she whispers, cringing at how pathetic the words sound. Max says nothing. I'm sorry. How could you? He asks, eventually, his voice quiet and angry. I thought it was the right thing. After Hiroshima. Max, I'm sorry. Nobody was supposed to get caught. Especially not you. I'm going to tell them everything. Max doesn't turn round. But will you give me a few more days? I just need a bit more time to get away. He does not move. It's too late, Joan thinks. Why should he not clear his name absolutely right now? Her eyes are blurred with tears. She wants to tell him that she loves him, that she never meant to hurt him. Wait, he says suddenly. What do you mean? Get away. I'm going to Australia. There's a boat in 5 days' time. I promise you'll be fine. They'll drop all the charges once I confess. Australia? I know it's a shock for you, and I'm so sorry. No, don't go. But I have to. I have to confess. I have to get you out. She looks up at the barred window. But don't you see? I don't want you to go to Australia. I love you. She looks at him and her heart cracks inside her. I love you too. A thought suddenly comes to her. There might be another way. I think I can get you out. How? I have a friend in the Foreign Office. He's in the network too. She arrives at William's office, and the receptionist in the lobby directs her towards a settee. She perches on the edge of it, her knees pressed together. She's holding herself in, tightly, tightly. Ah, William says, striding into the grand foyer with a smile fixed on his face, but his eyes questioning, alert. Joan stands up. I thought you might be free for lunch. He waits until they have crossed the street into St. James's Park, and then he turns to her. I thought I might be seeing you. Joan is shivering now, her whole body seeming to ache with the cold in spite of the warmth of her coat. Please, will you help me? I have to get out. They've arrested Max. They know there's been a leak from our laboratory. William sighs. They think there has, you mean? She observes that his eyes are pouchy and tired. It's falling apart, Jojo. Rupert has been posted to the Washington Embassy, which is an enormous coup for us, of course, but he's becoming a liability. Apparently he told some woman he's a Russian spy, and it's been passed off as a joke, but he's a time bomb out there. I think the pressure's got to him. He glances at Joan. This is urgent. I need to get out now. You promised. William frowns. You mentioned Australia before. That's where I want to go. That will take a while to sort out. Joan shakes her head. I can't wait. And I need 2 tickets. 2? Well, who's the other one for? Joan hesitates. It's for Max. I need you to get him out of prison and onto that boat. William stares at her. Why? I've told him everything. His mouth opens and then closes again. I'm sorry. It's too risky. The Americans have cracked the old KGB codes. I've told you it's a time bomb, Jojo. I've got to keep my head down. He looks at her. I can get you out, but not him as well. Joan was not expecting this. She thought it would be enough for William that Max knew everything and that she was in trouble. She still has one more card up her sleeve. She takes a deep breath. She does not want to do this. Which is it to be, then? He looks puzzled. What do you mean? Her voice cracks a little as she speaks. Well, as I see it, there are 2 options. She holds up a finger and is surprised to see that it is not shaking. 1, you do as I ask. Or 2, she holds up a second finger. I send a letter to MI5 about you, giving details of all your Russian activity. I'll mention Rupert too. They wouldn't believe you. There's nothing to link me to him. We've always been very careful about that. Well, that's where the photograph comes in. What photograph? It's of you and Rupert kissing. I have 1 copy for your wife and 1 for the Daily Mail. You wouldn't do that. She lowers her hand onto his. I'm sorry. I'm desperate. His voice is low and resigned. I'll need a day or two. There's a fast boat leaving in 4 days. She holds out her hand, and he takes it slowly and shakes it. I want Max and I to be on it.
Friday, 11:17 a.m. The press conference is scheduled for midday. By mid-morning, the police have cordoned off the house, and there are people milling around, setting up cameras and drinking coffee from flasks. Joan checks her watch. 2 minutes. She starts to dial Nick's number. She puts the receiver down. It is too late now. She walks to the front door. Behind it she can hear the hum of people talking, jostling, preparing. She thinks that somewhere inside her she has always known that this is how it would end. Just her, alone with her terror. But she also knows that it is no more than she deserves. She turns the catch, and the door clicks open. There is a strobe effect of all the cameras starting at once, freezing her in time. She knows what she wants to say, that she does not agree with the principle of spying against one's country, but these were unprecedented times. But when she tries to speak, the words will not come. She feels her heart falter, and then her knees buckle beneath her. Is this it? She wonders. Am I dying? She slips in and out of consciousness until she is lifted up and jolted into the ambulance. Her eyes flicker. Her heart is jumping in her chest. Nick, she whispers. Nick. It is over, she thinks. I will never see my son again. He will never know how it ended, or just how much I have loved him. But then she feels the ambulance jerk to a halt, and there is a sudden blast of cold air as the back door is flung open. Sir, you can't just open the door like that. We need Home Office consent for anyone to accompany her. Who are you? Nicholas Stanley, QC. Well, I'm afraid it's not normal practice for a patient's lawyer to... No, of course not, Nick says abruptly. But when he speaks again, his words fall on Joan like balm on an open wound. But she's my mum, and I'm going with her.
The mink coat was a mistake. In Southampton it stands out like a small red poppy in a sea of green. She walks on down the hill towards the dockyard, from which the boat will depart. William has arranged to transport Max personally from Brixton to Southampton as the official government escort. There is a beating in her chest. What if they don't come? A church bell rings, slowly, loudly. 6 o'clock. A dark blue car turns into the wide cobbled street and approaches slowly. The driver's window opens. William's eyes are tired and bloodshot. Joan approaches, her suitcase clasped in her hand. "Have you got him?" she asks, bending to look further into the car. William nods. He hands her an envelope. Her fingers tremble as she opens it and checks the tickets. 2 passengers, Southampton to Sydney. Birth certificates, marriage certificate, employers' references. It is all there. And at the bottom of the envelope, a St. Christopher's medal with a note stapled to the chain. She will look at the note later. "Thank you. How can I ever repay you?" "Never tell anyone. And burn the photograph." Joan reaches into her pocket and hands the photograph to him. "I thought you might like to do it." William smiles and slips it into the inside pocket of his jacket. "Thank you." He turns to Max. "Time to go, Professor." Max gets out of the car. He looks straight at her, and he is smiling. And in another second his arms are around her waist, and he is lifting her, snatching her up like a leaf caught in the wind, and he is laughing. And then suddenly so is she, both of them giddy like children. He puts her down and they begin to walk. It is almost a run, up the wooden steps and onto the boat, turning at the top of the steps to see William flash the car headlamps in farewell. For a brief moment, Joan lets go of Max's hand so that she can put her fingers to her lips and blow William a kiss. And it is not just a kiss. It is also a promise. Olivia Hallinan and Eleanor Bron were reading Red Joan by Jennie Rooney. The novel was abridged by Alison Joseph and produced by Elizabeth Allard.